Well, at the most recent of the BizNews conferences, Jan Oberholzer, the Chief Operating Officer, until very recently at Eskom, was going on quite a bit about the virtual wheeling program and the impact that this can have for South Africa's load shedding challenge. I'm going to talk to the man now who heads the company, Vodacom, which has implemented the very first virtual wheeling agreement, and why it means so much for businesses and for all South Africans. Shameel Joosub is the Chief Executive of Vodacom. Lovely to be talking with you, Shameel, particularly as, well, Jan Oberholzer did let the cat out of the bag a little with us, but he didn't go into much detail about the virtual wheeling agreements. Reading through the announcement that you had last week, that Vodacom is the first, and in fact, you co-developed this with Eskom, perhaps so that people can understand what is a wheeling agreement before we talk about the virtual wheeling agreement.
Okay, so hi, Alec, and thanks for having me on the show. I think the so wheeling is when you're generating power in one place and then wheeling it to the site where you actually need it. So an example would be if you have a solar plant and then wheeling it or basically transporting it to your factory, as an example. That's called wheeling. So it's the ability to generate it in one place and then essentially wheel it to where it's actually going to be consumed. Virtual wheeling is different. Virtual wheeling is essentially, so to give you a context of Vodacom. Vodacom has 15,000 sites. And so if you're generating power through an independent power producer, you'll be producing it, say, in the Northern Cape. And then you have to get it to all 15,000 sites. Now, it's not in close proximity as it would be in wheeling. So you have to now get it to 15,000 different spots around the country. So virtual wheeling gives you the ability to contribute that power to the grid, and then Eskom would virtually wheel it according to what you're actually consuming and do an offset. But you'll still be consuming the power, not just in the spot where you're using it, but the power is still going into the grid itself. And the concept is they will then pass us a credit. So we'll contribute the power to grid, sign up with the IPP. The benefit for Eskom is the government's balance sheet doesn't have to be used to sign up with that independent power producer, which could be a wind power producer, it could be solar, and so on. So it relieves Treasury and Eskom from that liability. But in return, what will then happen is we contribute it and we get a credit for the power that we've contributed to the grid.
So to keep it real simple, if you spend R1 billion with a independent power producer, maybe put up some solar panels, and obviously many for R1 billion, you then take the power that produces and you guaranteed that offtake from the grid, whether there's load shedding or not.
So you contribute that power into the grid, and you have to contribute it in the way that you're consuming it. So there's different rates and there's lots of complication in terms of the rates, but that's what we developed, is a platform that can help you to manage where the offtake is actually happening from. But Eskom, in the end, will pass you a credit to keep it simple.
And how much are you investing to keep the Vodacom network going? Because we know that when there is load shedding, one of the worst things that happens is that your cell phone doesn't work anymore because the batteries eventually go flat if load shedding has been going on for too long.
So it's cost us about 4 billion rand in the last 4 years in terms of additional batteries and so on that we've implemented into the network. And we're spending about 800 million a year on diesel now. And so, it's quite a big issue. About 26% of our consumption is now coming through diesel, which is actually, to be honest, not great. And that's up 80% from last year. So it's a big issue for us. So how we're dealing with that is, of course, there you're trying to do local generation where you can, but then you need big enough sites. You need to be careful that the solar panels don't get stolen and so on. So that's one part of it. But this is trying to say, how can we help with the underlying problem? And the underlying problem, simply put, is we need more power, more generation, so that there isn't load shedding. So by doing this virtual wheeling, and when it works, because now we're going to go sign up the IPP, other corporates in our industry, but also broader than that, can do the same. And so, if multiple corporates do that and we're contributing power to the grid, we'll alleviate some of the issues that us Eskom is faced with.
You must have done some numbers. Do you have any idea how much, say, in the next year, corporates could come to the party in this regard?
Well, I think the first part is making sure that we can prove the case. At the moment, we'll be focusing on the Eskom power that we consume. We would like to take it further than the Eskom power. But I mean, we can't take the risk on the municipalities. So we want to start here. And I think our intention is, even with our piece, as Eskom gets more confidence in the program, that they will, sort out with the municipalities, but allow us to do more. So that's the intention. But I think, it just depends how quickly this takes up from corporate South Africa. But I mean, you could be doing 1,000 megawatts plus that could come from a program like this. So, because it's, I'd say it's very beneficial for corporates which have multiple sites, the likes of your ShopRites and your Pick n Pays, and your other telco operators that have multiple sites around the country. This type of solution works for them. It does. By the way, it doesn't sort out your load shedding, because remember, load shedding is localized, but it tries to deal with the fundamental issue of trying to contribute more power to the grid.
So if it doesn't deal with load shedding, how is it going to support the business case at Vodacom?
So it's us taking on the responsibility of trying to help with the bigger issue and playing our role as a corporate. That's one. For our own problems is what we're managing today, which honestly is costing us a lot, which is the over $1 billion a year in batteries plus the 800 million in diesel. That's how we're dealing with the issue today, and that's why we've got better network availability than any of our other competitors. But because we've been proactive on it, and because we've put a big investment into it. But that's how you have to manage through it, because I think customers don't always appreciate that networks run on power.
We know that South 32, formerly BHP Billiton, formerly Billiton, have got the Hillside smelter, and they did a deal with Eskom years ago, and Eskom has maintained its side of the bargain, even though it's cost the country and cost Eskom a lot of money. I guess, though, the fact that it fulfilled its contract and didn't try and break the contract must make you confident that in this virtual wheeling system, that Eskom is actually, its word is worth following.
Well, I think it helps. It is a big benefit for Eskom, right, in terms of us taking on some of the liabilities of dealing with the IPP. So it allows for our balance sheet to be used and not theirs. So I think Eskom's fully on board, because they get it. They need the assistance, and I think they're quite excited about the fact that corporate South Africa can follow.
Okay, so you first, how did it all begin? Who approached whom in this virtual wheeling innovation?
Well, I actually came from a meeting that we had with Eskom to understand the crux of the problem, because as you can imagine, we're sitting with all these outages and so on, and what we really needed clarity on is how long, when will it be solved, that type of thing. So we went engaged with Eskom, which was at the time Andre and Jan, and the teams, and effectively that's where the concept was born. But it's taken a year to work through all the detail, and let's say find comfort on how it will actually work. But also we've helped to build a virtual wheeling platform which can do the reconciliations, which I think was one of the issues. So, it then became a joint development team, and Khalid, the acting CEO, has of course helped to drive it through with his team.
So if I understand correctly, it is going to add additional power to the grid once you've done the deal with the IPP, but it's not going to stop load shedding until there's sufficient additional power added to the grid that there's no load shedding for anybody. Is that correct?
Correct. So the way I see it, it's helping to contribute to the issue, or trying to alleviate the issue. So what you're then doing is Eskom has its plans, and of course it has its IPPs and so on. And then this helps to take some of the load off them and actually provide, a quicker resolution to it. And it's corporate South Africa playing a role. So you'll have some self-generation, like the bulletin one. You'll have, virtual wheeling, and then you'll have IPPs, and then of course Eskom's own plans, I would imagine, to sort out its plants and so on.
So how much of an investment are you going to make in this as the flag waver?
It's a few billion, in terms of, we're busy finalizing the absolute numbers at this stage. But I mean, you're going to sign a 15, 20-year offtake agreement, which will be back to back with Eskom. So it's a long-term arrangement. It's not something that that we do and we kind of get out of in a few years. It's a kind of a permanent commitment.
And are there plenty of potential suppliers?
Yes. So there isn't a lack of IPPs. We've already run the procurement processes and so on, and we've already identified a short list of the ones that we want to deal with. So now it's, post the agreement with Eskom, it's now crossing and dotting the T's and making sure the back-to-backs work with the IPP, and then, and also who readily has power available or is closer to having power available. That will be part of the motivation for us of trying to move quickly.
And the pricing?
So the pricing is actually, again, that's also being finalized, because of course the exchange rates weakened a lot since last year when we did the first initial analysis. But there is a slight benefit for us in terms of the rate and the rate that we'll get back. But that's not the primary reason why we're doing it. I think why we're doing it is of course to help with the bigger issue, and it does help us to make more power green.
Shameel, it was interesting to pick up late last week that Discovery is now on Wednesday going to be having its new energy offering for businesses, and we're seeing elsewhere as well the ingenuity that's coming through from the private sector. And yet only 2 years ago, the private sector was not allowed to build any power plant bigger than 1 megawatt, which is quite extraordinary. When you said that there would be, in your opinion, that you could see 1,000 megawatts coming through here, that's one stage of load shedding. Is this from the conversations you've already had with other companies who would be interested in coming to the party?
Yeah, so I think the whole telco sector is on board to follow suit, as an example. So it's the minute you've got the processes working, then others can, you can say, okay, this is working, take the deal, and others can implement it. And the way it's being set up is that it's ability to replicate. Now, of course, that does come down to Eskom also doing a bit of a roadshow, and of course we'll be happy to convey our experience and so on. But that will help to try and alleviate. It could be more than 1,000 megawatts, to be honest, but I think it's gonna depend on how quickly others follow suit in doing it. So this first one I think is really important. And now once we've done the IPP part, and the quicker we can get that on board, I think the quicker people are going to feel comfortable to follow suit.
So it's a bit like you've done the hard work, you've put the blueprint together, plug and play other companies, and if you have a interest in doing this, then that is obviously you're going to go ahead with it. But as far as those companies are concerned, what is the benefit that they would be getting if it's not going to help them with load shedding?
Well, the big issue is they're helping to contribute to alleviating load shedding or levels of load shedding. So I think that's the bigger benefit. Of course, what they're doing is, it's a back-to-back, right? So, and you will get a benefit on the rate itself between what's called the WEPS rate and the rate that you're paying the IPP. So there is a benefit there in terms of cost that can also help you offset some of the diesel costs on the other side, I would say.
And as far as the Vodafone group as a whole is concerned, this move towards renewables, is that part of the mission statement?
Very much so. We're trying to aim for, in the broader Vodafone group, to getting to net zero by 2030. Of course, in the South African context, that's going to be difficult. But we're trying to make sure that we can do everything, different plans across all our markets in terms of dealing with IPPs, where can we get green power from, reducing the amount of diesel, and so on. But there's deliberate plans in each of our markets to how do we achieve that.
How big a headache is this for you in running a group like yours? You mentioned earlier 15,000 points of presence where you'd need the electricity. And I'm sure that the phone lines buzz after there's been load shedding because the public are not forgiving. So when you wake up in the morning, is this one of the things that bugs you every day?
Yeah, definitely. And it's honestly the level of load shedding, especially when it gets worse, right, has been a bit of a nightmare for us. Because you've got batteries and you need to have enough batteries on each site. You can't have generators on each site. You have to have, revolving generators. And of course, there's certain upsides where you have to put permanent generators. There's data centers and so on and so on. Then you've got to have enough fuel. And then, of course, things like fuel price increases don't help. So it's a multitude of different issues. It's definitely increased the cost to do business. And it's been quite disruptive in terms of network availability. And, customers don't necessarily make the connection, right? What we do see is when power goes off, customers are using more data. So when there's load shedding, they do go to their phones, and that, of course, lasts for as long as the batteries last on that particular site. And then you're not just dealing with load shedding; you're also dealing with, localized, cable theft, localized issues on power availability, because you've got the Eskom piece on the one side, but then you've got municipality issues, on the other side.
So the Eskom deal that you've got directly with Eskom, how big in the Vodacom network is your direct relationship with Eskom versus with municipalities? Because I can see, as you explained, on municipalities, you get load shedded. But as far as the Eskom side is concerned, could they at least give you back the power that you are producing to them when they might be load shedding others?
So that's about 20%. And so, that's one part of it. And of course, as we gain, and then we look at, starting to also from our side, then looking at which municipalities do we deal with directly. But ideally, we want Eskom to deal with the municipalities as they gain more confidence, and then allow us to increase from the 20% upwards. So, I think it's also putting one's foot into the water and then gaining a little bit more confidence, I think is an important part. And we're hoping for more confidence from Eskom. Ideally, we want to get to 100%, of renewables. What we've also been doing at our buildings is generating power. So on our campus, we're now up to every available space, every rooftop, every car park has been converted to solar. And we're now generating about 9.6 megawatts of power that we want to contribute to the grid. And effectively, we're not using all of it. So I think another big thing is going to be, how can corporate South Africa, but even beyond corporate South Africa, how can people who've got solar and renewables start to contribute back to the grid? And I think that will also be quite useful. So, City of Joburg don't have that. I think some provinces have it, but not Joburg is yet. Once that comes, I think, that will also be useful because, all the big, there's quite a few big corporates or a lot of big corporates in Joburg, Pretoria that can be contributing to the grid.
Fascinating development, and it's hard to believe it's only 2 years ago that this door was opened for the first time. Shameel Joosub is the Chief Executive of Vodacom, and I'm Alec Hogg from BizNews.com.